right behind me is a common thing that I think we're gonna start seeing more of. There are 8 lots that are currently owned by the bank, and that the bankruptcy trustee will have to approve if you try to buy them. Now, the interesting thing about this is data just came out and the foreclosures have increased more and more. Matter of fact, they've increased 5% year over year and 10% month over month. The builder who owns them is currently going through bankruptcy. And the sad thing about it is we need these small mom and pop builders, right? We need these small mom and pop builders because we know that when we have these kind of builders, like we're gonna get better quality versus these big corporate builders like Lennar or Toll Brothers. Like we're gonna get better quality normally out of the mom and pop builders. The other thing that's interesting about these lots here is you can barely see it, but where I'm at, you can get a nice, beautiful view of the foothills here in Boise. It's close access to downtown Boise. It's close to the Greenbelt, and it's by the Boise River. It's sad because we have all of these different lots. I'm afraid that we're gonna see more and more of this come to the Treasure Valley. Now, the thing that's so important about following this is the crack in the foundation before everything splits. Just think of it like a stick. If you were to take a stick and you were to bend it, you're gonna get to a spot where all of a sudden it's gonna start cracking and you're gonna see some splinters come up. And eventually it's gonna overbend to a spot where it splits in half. And right now, these 8 lots that are currently owned by the bank or going to bankruptcy and have to be approved through the bankruptcy attorney, these are just the beginning splinters, right? These are just the beginning splinters of what's going on here in the housing market. And unfortunately, I think this is just the beginning of the builders that we're gonna see. And it really does sadden me because I do think it's so important to have mom and pop builders building in your area so that you have good quality builders. I mean, how many bad reviews have you heard from people who have bought properties like from Lennar or Toll Brothers or these big corporation builders, and they feel like they don't even care, that they're throwing up these houses that are, I almost feel like it's Potter from It's a Wonderful Life, right? Where he's building these houses that are junk because all they care about is profit, which of course a mom and pop builder does have to care about profit. But I think mom and pop builders care more about the consumer, right? Because if they're only building 20 houses a year, they're gonna really rely on reviews, where these big corporate builders that are building hundreds of homes a year, they don't care about all these other things. It does sadden me to see something like this happening that's going on behind me. Again, this builder's, at least these 8 lots, maybe even more, has more inventory that's going to the bank, that's gonna be owned by the bank, and that the bankruptcy attorney is gonna have to approve. I mean, right behind me, you can't really see it, but right here, let's see, right there is a beautiful skyline of the Boise area. And over here, behind this house, you can see the foothills there. I mean, so this is really a nice spot. And it looks like there's 4 houses that are currently being under construction. And I don't know what's going on with them. I just know that these specific lots are going under foreclosure. And which brings me to this article by Adam. In this article, it says January in 2024, the U.S. foreclosure market shows that there are a total of 33,000 U.S. properties with foreclosure filings. These are default notice or subject to auctions. And it's up 5% from a year ago, but it's up 10% month over month. And the thing about something you have to remember is, foreclosures are not at the peak, right? The peak of the foreclosures happened in 2010, but they started to show their ugly head in 2005, and 2006, 2007, they started jumping. And again, this is just like the cracks through the foundation that we're gonna see as the market continues as it's going. Like these 8 lots right here that are getting, that the builder who owns them is going into bankruptcy. And so as we follow these things, as you have to follow these things in your area, because your area, if there's places or properties like this that are under foreclosure, like nobody probably would know that this is currently, because there's a lot of nice new houses here, and most people driving by wouldn't realize that this area is like, these homes or these lots are under bankruptcy, right? And so when you're watching your area, see if I can get out of the wind here. When you're watching your area, you gotta follow those cracks. You gotta see what's going on, because again, in 2005, 2006, that's when the foreclosures started showing their ugly heads, but they didn't come to the full fruition until 2010. And man, it's beautiful. It's a little windy out. I don't know if you can see it behind me, but there's some snow caps on the foothills here. I mean, this is a really nice area. And again, I don't know if these other 4 houses are going to the bank. It's a little windy day here in Boise. This article goes on to say that there's about, in 19 states, there's been an increase in foreclosure filings being completed in 19 of the 50 states that they follow. And one of those states being Michigan is up 200%, Minnesota is up 47%, California is up 43%, Pennsylvania 36%, and Missouri 34%. But then they also go into the metros, and they follow these metros, and then they go into who has the highest foreclosure rate. So right now, the highest foreclosure rates are in Delaware, Nevada, and Indiana. When we were talking about the metros that have the most, again, so these are metros that have 200,000 or more people that they track living in the area. And according to this article, New York is at the top, then followed up by Houston, Texas, Los Angeles, California, Miami, Florida, and then Chicago, Illinois. So those are the top 5 metros that have the highest foreclosure filings, according to Adam, which follows the real estate data. But the one thing I also want to bring up is this community right behind me that has a lot of properties that are currently owned by the bank or going into bankruptcy, that the bill is going into bankruptcy. This is number 3. We've had 3 so far this year that have come across my desk where full developments have gone into foreclosure or have gone back to the bank. And again, this is like we're 2 months in to the 2024 year, and we've already seen 3 developments go into either have a notice of default filed against them, or they have the properties going back to the bank. And so as we follow what's going on here in the Treasure Valley and in other places, it's important to follow those things in your area. It's important to see, like again, most people driving by would never know that there's 8 lots here that when you buy them, you have to get approval from the bankruptcy trustee if you're gonna buy them. But look at this, like I'm gonna see if I can get it on the camera. Behind me, you can see, like, you have some foundations right here. You have some foundations that were currently being dug that haven't been finished, and the builder just had to stop because they ran out of money. And the other thing that I haven't brought up that I want to bring up is, remember, in 2020 to 2021, people could get in and start building, and their performance would be blown out of whack in the good way. But in 2022, when we started talking about these foreclosures and the market's changing, and that we're going to see more and more types of things like this, the reason being is these builders, they have to get through the city, and they have to get through, and they got to get the approvals before they can even start building. And so when they're going through and they're getting these builders, as the market's changing, now they could have pushed this through when it was at the peak, and they didn't follow, or they didn't realize it was at the peak. And so now they're having to figure out, how am I gonna make money here? Or I ran out of money because inventory's not moving as fast as it was. And so these people behind me, unfortunately, these are going back to the bank. And I think we're gonna see more and more of that as we see the equity in homes, at least here in the Treasure Valley. We're seeing equity in homes from people who bought in 2021 all the way until now. Like, their equity is wiped out, meaning what they bought it for versus what they could sell it for, they're selling it for a loss. Just the other day, I was on the MLS yesterday, and I scroll through it because I'm always trying to keep my finger on the market. And what I realized is some of these houses, I'd click on it and I'd go into the history and I'd say, okay, when did this sell? How much did it sell for? Oh my gosh, right now, if you just took even just 3% in closing costs and you take that away from what they're listing their house at, they're taking a $30,000 loss for what they bought in 2022 or the beginning of 2022. And some of these people are losing even more than that. I mean, we've seen homes where they're taking a short sale of $100,000, assuming that the lender's willing to take that loss. And so it's really, really important, if you're looking at the market, if you're looking at investing in real estate, you really got to crunch the numbers and make sure it's right for you, because if it's not right for you in a year, you may not be able to sell without doing some kind of short sale or foreclosure. Because remember, these people who are selling, they still have to get the approval from the bank, bankruptcy attorney or from the bankruptcy trustee to sell it for what they're trying to sell it for. And so you don't want to be putting yourself in that situation. And that's why we are so passionate about sharing with you what's going on, because we don't want you to get stuck. We don't want you to get stuck in an area or in a home that you don't like, that you're not going to be happy with. This is the third subdivision that has gone into either notice of default or going back to the bank that we've seen so far. I'm down here by the Boise River, kind of crossing the bridge here. The commercial foreclosures are on a rise as well. So before I get into that article, I just want to let you know, I mean, this is a really nice area of Boise. It's a little overcast day, which makes it great for filming. And I think I'm actually going to go back over this bridge, crossing the river, and walk down this community. But we're in 2024, the second month of 2024, and we have had three properties, whether it's a full developments going into foreclosure or the one that I'm going to be walking by. There's about 10 townhome condo type styles where the developer has had a notice of default. Now that might be because they haven't sold all their inventory. You know, they could be trying to get a modification, and they have a bunch of, maybe it's a long-term rental and they're just trying to do a loan modification. And if they're doing a loan modification, they're gonna need some kind of showing that they're struggling making the payment. So I don't know what's caused the notice of default. There's 10 properties. The notice of default on the properties that the foreclosure notice went into was over $7 million. And that goes right along what we're talking about the commercial industry and how the commercial industry foreclosures are rising, and they're rising rapidly. A lot of the reason why is because the Fed fund rate directly correlates with the commercial loan policies. And when they need to refinance, something that they run into, well, that's kind of cool. I'm gonna see if I can get this shot, because these guys are surfing out here. So let's see if I can show you what they're doing. It's cold enough that they actually have to wear wetsuits. But you can see he's out there surfing around. It's kind of neat. Because the commercial lending directly correlates with the Fed fund rate, when the Fed fund rate is at 5%, when it was almost like nothing, almost a 0%, this is really affecting commercial borrowers. It's changing their performance, especially apartment complex owners or commercial building owners that need to be refinanced. And that's why we're seeing this massive amount of increases when it comes to foreclosures and the foreclosures from the foreclosures in the market. I'm going to get into this article. Again, this is from Adam. The U.S. commercial foreclosures increase January 2024. That we had a low in the commercial realm for foreclosures at like 114 in their index. And now the current figure is at 635. So there's almost a 600% increase, not quite, 500 and some change increase in a matter of 4 years. And this is what I was talking about when we're talking about the real estate, the residential real estate foreclosures, and how it can start low, but year over year, when it can grow in leaps and bounds, it kind of can be scary. But yeah, so right behind me, these are really nice townhouses right on the Boise River. It's one of those, these are one of those communities where it's like a lock and leave. You can come here, and what we found is people who like to travel, maybe they're snowbirds, or maybe they like to come in here, go skiing, leave in the, maybe go down to Arizona. They really like these kind of communities because, one, they feel, even though they're on the Boise River, they still feel private. They still have the ability that you can just lock the house, boom, jump on an airplane and go. What's fascinating to me is, they've been following this since 2014, and it says that the commercial foreclosures are at a 740 nationwide. And it says that there's a 97% year-over-year increase, signals the revitalizing market and how it's navigating through these long-term economic shifts. And the uptick signifies not just that a return of pre-pandemic activity levels, but also underscores that the ongoing adjustments within within the commercial real estate sector as it navigates through a landscape transformed by the evolving business and practices of consumers. State by state commercial review, it says that California, as a bellwether state, began the decade at 209 foreclosures in January of 2014. Though it experienced a decrease in the following months, the foreclosures, by January of 2024, California had the highest number of commercial foreclosures for the month at 182. This was a 72% increase from last month and 174 increase from the year before. That's a massive jump. For foreclosures to jump that rapidly, that fast in just a year is kind of interesting, and it's kind of what we've been talking about, right? Like, we've been talking about how this is gonna happen, like this is happening as we speak. And it's why you gotta pay attention to this, because these builders are running out of money. These developers are running out of money. Now, not all of them, right? Some of them can weather the storm. Some of them can weather these things. But when we see the increase of foreclosures jumping 172 points or 172%, those are big jumps. And again, you got to keep in mind that these foreclosures, the reason why they're jumping is because when homes and properties were flying off the market, you could put it whatever price you want on it and they were going and they didn't care. Well, now all of a sudden these builders or these developers are having to hold on to their property longer. And if they are overextended, like the property we just left, where there was 8 lots that were currently bank owned or that had to get approved through the bankruptcy trustee, that's like the cracks through the foundation, and the foundation is getting ready to drop. And so we really have to follow this, and you really got to be careful, because especially if you want to invest. And that's why buying a single family home to move into and buy is not really an investment right now. The main reason why it's not an investment is because there's a lot of risk, and you can't, there's a good chance that you're not going to see any of that equity for a while. I mean, back in 2006, when people bought at the peak, they didn't see a return on their investment for 10 years because they had to wait for the market to come swing back around before they could sell it and realize some kind of profit. And so they had to weather it. They had to make a lot of mortgage payments. You can't be getting in to buying residential real estate and thinking, man, this is an investment, at least here in the Treasure Valley. Now, in other markets where the foreclosure rate is lower, you know, you might be able to get some of the upside. But right here, like this community that I've been walking around right here next to the Boise River, which is behind me, like they have 10 properties that have a notice of default of over $7 million, which tells me that the builder hasn't, like, I'm guessing, again, I don't know, I'm guessing that the builder thought that all of these units were going to be sold, or he has so many projects and he's stretched so thin that he's trying to hurry up and get these sold so that he can make his profits and hopefully survive. I'm going to tell you guys a story of somebody that I know of, and he was a builder back in the 2006, 2007 era, and he had about 10 homes that he listed, that he built and that he sold. And he sold them right at the peak before everything came crumbling down. And when I was talking to this person, what he was sharing with me is that if he didn't sell it within those timeframes, like if he had to hold on one more month, everything was going to come crumbling down. And I think we're seeing that. We're seeing that. I mean, with being 2 months into 2024, and we see that there's 3 different developers, 3 different developments, 3 different builders that have a notice of default on their properties, or that it has gone back to the bank. Like, that is a telling time that we really should be thinking about, and we should really be that we need to be aware of. Look at these properties behind me. So like, these are available townhouses, really nice, new. I don't know if these are specifically part of that foreclosure area, or if it's some of those ones that are currently being built. But these properties are listed, right? They are listed for sale. And so it just makes me wonder how many more of these builders are just like at the cusp of breaking, and they just haven't broken yet. And they're just trying to squeeze out as much as possible. Like this builder who I mentioned back in 2007, where he sold his last house, and a month later, everything came crumbling down. And I just wonder how many of these builders are in the same situation, whether it be here in the Treasure Valley or in other parts of the other parts of the US, where when homes were selling within blinking, like you could literally put a sign in the yard and within an hour it would be sold, and it's a completely different ball game now. And so I just wonder how many of these builders are going to get hurt if they can't sell their inventory. Again, I think we need mom and pop builders. I think the mom and pop builders really help when you have these national builders that come in and build these cracker box houses, because the mom and pop builders care, right? They care if they're building 20 homes a year, 30 homes a year, like they care about you. They care about what you think of their product, versus some corporation that's building thousands of homes throughout the US. They don't care. They just want the cheapest house possible for the most amount of money, and you might be buying a piece of junk. So I do believe we need to see more mom and pop builders. And so it does sadden me. Like, I hope that some of them can weather the storm, but I do think there's a lot right now, especially with all these different foreclosures popping up within 2 months of 2024, that we're going to see even more. And just recently, an article came out and it was talking about how the FOMC has no intention on dropping the interest rate. And they don't have an intention on dropping the interest rate, which means that we're going to be in for an even longer world of hurt. I do want to see more mom and pop builders, at least in our area, and not as many corporate builders that, you go in and you feel like you're buying a cracker box that's ready to fall out. This article says that New York, Texas, New Jersey, and Florida have shown significant variances over the decades, with each state having its unique economic composition changing the foreclosure rate. For instance, New York had a total of 59 commercial foreclosures in January of 2024, a 12% decrease from last month, and a 12% decrease from a year ago. But Texas saw a 17% increase from last month and a 143% increase from the year prior. New Jersey saw a 38% increase from last year and a 157% increase from the year before. And then Florida saw an 18% increase from last month and a 42% increase from last year. And that's why it's so important, guys, that you remember real estate is not a national topic, but it's a local topic. Like, it is specific to an area, because every area has different economic things that are changing, whether it be people moving and retirees, a bunch of retirees coming in where the economy doesn't really matter except for when their 401k gets wiped out. But right now it's doing the exact opposite, right? The S&P 500 and a lot of stocks are kind of shooting up. But it does bring up an interesting fact that there are a lot of big higher ups that are selling stocks. An article that I just read the other day is one of our Congress members, who is a better stock trader than Nancy Pelosi's husband, has sold all of his stock except for two, and those two stocks that he kept, he's shorting the market. And he knows, obviously, the people in Congress, the people in the House of Representatives, like, they have an insider trade deal. And I won't get into my thoughts on if you should be able to or not. But when you see these higher ups selling their stocks, it's like they know something's coming. They know something that we don't know that's coming. And so we just want to be prepared. We want to be thinking about what's going to happen. Going back to real estate being area specific. For instance, like Boise, the Treasure Valley, we saw a massive decrease in home prices, and now we're kind of flatlining. And I just wonder what it is, if we're going to see that stick just get overextended and all of a sudden snap. But till then, hope you guys enjoy your day. I'm going to get out of this blowing wind, cold day here in Boise, Idaho.